Welcome to the thisABILITY Adventures podcast. I'm Andrea Anderson.
And I'm Chip Dodd from Team thisABILITY. Hi there, my name is Chip Dodd from Team thisABILITY Adventure Racing, and this is the Race Ramble for the recent Endless Mountains Adventure Race for 2023. I was not on this team, I was on the Adventure Addicts team, so I'm looking forward to hearing their experience through this race. We raced side by side, we leapfrogged a little bit, and I think you guys will really enjoy this. So let me start off with introductions. Lewis, your team captain, why don't you start off with tell us a little bit about yourself, your racing background, and the most important question, why in the world, what motivates you to do these crazy multi-day races?
Sure. I'm Luis Bektash. I'm originally from Ecuador. I've been adventure racing I'm going on to 20 years. I celebrated my 30th expedition race with Endless Mountain, so that was pretty cool. And I totally forgot about it at the end. Yeah, it was a really cool race, and I think why I do this sport is because I really like to push my limits. I like to, get to know new places, new faces, and enjoy some time with friends playing out in the woods in the Amazon or in whatever place this crazy sport sends us to. So that's a little bit about me. I have 3 kids, married, and I work on a animal health company. So while some others are training, I'm on a plane or in front of a computer. I wish I could do that less.
You have a real job.
I have a real job.
Compared to Andrea and I, it has a weird kind of job.
Yes, I'm looking forward for my adaptation. You guys want to adopt me? I will send a social security number after this call.
Sounds good. Andrea, well, you're normally one of the team captains for the race. This time you had a different role, but let's go ahead and start off with you for the next introduction.
Sure. I'm Andrea Anderson. I've been racing since 2016. And what motivates me to race, I think, is, well, lots of different reasons, but just one, to stay healthy. Like, it motivates me to live a healthy lifestyle. I love to be outside. I also feel like unique experiences are what is going to prolong my life. Like, I feel like when you do the same thing day after day after day, like, you start to forget, like, what'd you do last week? You don't really remember. It's like what you did every week, every day. So I think the more unique experiences you have, like, the more memories you have to look back on, like, it just makes your life longer and just more exciting. I also want to be a good example to my kids. And I think challenging yourself is just the way for growth, and adventure racing totally challenges you. So that's why I love adventure racing.
All right, going along with the Brady Bunch squares, Amanda, you're next.
I'm Amanda Rankin. I'm originally from Maryland, and I started racing in 2014, primarily expedition length races. I would say for me, the greatest motivator is seeking out exploration. Like, I always wanted to be able to see as much of the course design as possible. So to see more of it, I guess you have to go faster to see more of it. And kind of like Andrea, I think there's a lot of personal growth that comes from particularly for expedition. For me, I don't get the same type of growth experience from some of the shorter races. And everybody gets different things from different races. But for me, expeditions truly provide a unique growth experience each time. So I keep seeking it. I'm also looking forward to my adoption. So in the meantime, where I am still restricted in, how much leave time I have and when and how I can get time off, I always want to make like the biggest bang for my buck when I do have time off.
It was really funny when we were doing the Shenandoah Epic 24, and you're like, wow, this is weird. This is like the shortest race I've ever done. And it's like, what do you mean? You started off with the big hard races and skipped all of the lead up. Yeah.
Yeah, again, I wouldn't probably recommend that to most people, but yeah, it's a way.
All right. Jason, how about you?
All right. Jason Arndt. I live in Connecticut, married, 2 daughters, 3 dogs. And what motivates me for adventure racing? at this point, it's just fun. I just love getting out there, the challenge of both the physical and the mental aspect of it, right? So, it's just fun, and it's addicting now to the point where you finish one race and it's just on looking forward to the next one, and that's it.
Nice. So I got 1,000 questions while we were at this race because people wanted to know, like, why the hell is Chip and Andrea not racing together? So Lewis, why don't you tell us how the team formed and why somehow you left me out?
No, you left yourself out. Let's start with that. No, I mean, initially, and I'm trying to remember because I think Amanda and I spoke about, doing this race right after Worlds in Paraguay. We wanted to do a shorter race, and then this one came up, and we're like, okay, so Amanda and I were in, and then we're like, okay, who else can be in? And then I think Chip, you had mentioned that Jason was also wanting to race, so Jason reached out to me. And then initially I was gonna bring part of my team from Ecuador to race with me over here, but they couldn't come. So then it was the three of us, and we started reaching out to people. And then I'm like, well, why don't I try and convince Andrea? Because this is gonna be super fun if Andrea races against Chip. So I reached out to her. I'm like, hey, what do you think about racing with us at the Endless Mountain? I know you guys are just coming off Croatia, and then you have Colorado. And she's like, I don't know. And I'm like, okay, just think about it. And then like 10 minutes later, she's like, I'm in. So we had reached a couple of other folks who were kind of on the fence. And then Andrea, she just texted back, I'm in. And then I told the guys, hey, I got a surprise for you. I'm not going to tell you until tomorrow. And then, it was the best surprise ever. So that's kind of how, we came together, and it was great.
Yeah, trying to pull off 6 expeditions in a year, it's like I feel like I burned through all the teammates, and I think I even like, hey, you guys want to do this thing? And everybody's like, no, we can't. So amazing. I'm really excited that you guys were able to get a team together and pull it off. It was super fun to see you guys out there and to race separate. Okay, so tell us about the team roles. Like, how did you divide that up? And like, who did what on the team, or was it fluid? And how'd that work out for you?
So, I've been team captain before for my Ecuadorian teams. And basically, I was like, okay, well, if Chip was here, he would be the captain, right? But you weren't. So I think for me personally, I think there's different ways of directing or captaining a team, right? I've raced in different teams, so there's teams that really need a captain to tell them what to do specifically, like do this, do that, and this is how we're doing it. That works for some teams, but I think as you get to race with people and what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and what they're looking for in the race, you kind of let the dynamic kind of flow, except when you're like really needed to step in, right? So I think in our case, we're all kind of experienced racers. Everybody kind of knew their role, kind of knew what they needed to do. We were fortunate enough to have 2 excellent navigators. So with Jason and Andrea, I mean, it was amazing. Like, the navigation was on point except for one point. But then I think everybody understood the roles. And when I think I needed to step in, I'm like, okay, guys, you guys, you're tired. Let's rest. We gotta eat. Done. Right. So I wouldn't say like in other teams, there's been, the captain, there's been the navigator, there's been the mother, there's been this and that. In this one, I think, there wasn't a definition of roles, but I think everybody knew the role that they needed to play in just by the nature of the team. I don't know, guys, if you could say something else around that.
Yeah, Jason, Andrea, do you guys want to jump in on the navigation part? How did that go?
Well,
Yeah,
I'll just jump in before we talk about navigation.
Okay.
Just because I just wanted to say, when I agreed to do the race, like it's just like I had an epiphany, like I have to do this. Like, a couple of races had already gone by this year, and so I realized that I probably could physically do it, which was the reason I didn't want to do it earlier in the season. I thought I wasn't going to do it, and then once I realized I wanted to, and Lewis had a place on the team. Like, I couldn't remember if he asked me or if I asked him because I was so excited to do it. And so I really appreciated that they took me on the team. And, you know, racing without Chip, our roles weren't the same as what they had been in Paraguay necessarily. And so I think we did all just try to figure out what was needed where and when, and just kind of tried to fill the gap. So I also felt like it was an opportunity for me to grow in a way that's different than when I raced with Chip. So I kind of appreciated that I didn't race with Chip. I felt like I got to do some things that I wouldn't normally get to do because I'm not the best at them. So, you know, I usually defer to whoever's better at a certain thing. And Chip is usually better. He's better at a lot of things and he fills a lot of roles. So it kind of let me like step up to the plate where I might not have in other ways. So that was really exciting. So then that being said, though, I did navigate some. I helped, but Jason was definitely the lead and I deferred to him. And so, you know, also, I guess being without Chip, I just felt like there was a little more just responsibility for the team. Like I could tell what was missing without having Chip there, just because I know Chip so well. You know, he's strong and he's got a lot of great qualities. And not that any of you guys didn't either, but I just had a little bit more anxiety than I might have otherwise. And I felt a little bit more like I had to take care of us for some reason. Like, and that's not even a feeling that I necessarily should have had. It's just my natural innate, like, I have to take care of things and people. And so that was really different for me racing without Chip. But I appreciated, you know, the opportunity, and I really appreciated being able to help with the nav because I just think that is so much fun. So, okay, Jason, what about the nav?
Well, I was just like in response to what you just stated, though. I mean, I think, and I think everybody else on the team would agree. I mean, you stepped up in a lot of ways, a lot of leadership in a lot of ways throughout the entire race. You know, so I think that was awesome. So if that was something you felt was outside your comfort zone, my first time racing with you, I wouldn't have known that. So, meaning, I think you know you did really, really great in a lot of different ways. So. As far as navigation goes, you know, I mean, I might have been the lead nav, but I mean, it was a lot of ways, you know, a shared role. We didn't really talk about it, like our navigational approach, like going in all that much. You know, we didn't say, hey, this is how we're going to tackle this together, or this is how we're going to partner on this. But it kind of worked out really well that Andrea and I have kind of slightly probably different ways approach to navigation. They complement each other really, really well. I'm someone who's more of, I'm looking at the map. I know where I'm at on the map. I'm directionally, I know where I'm going. I'm following the features. I'm following the topo. I'm following the roads, the trails, and I know where I'm at. And then when we get to a place where we had to actually, you know, hey, we got to go 100 meters off this spur. You know, Andrea is like a machine, and she's like, boom, I know my 1K pace count, and I'm going, right. And she just was on point with the bearing and the pace counting and everything. And I think so together that worked out really, really well.
Yeah, the one thing I really liked what you guys did, and Lewis and Amanda in Paraguay, you guys gave me this feedback. It's probably the feedback I get on every race, but I try to take on too much. Like I'm trying to be team captain and Sherpa and nav and the bike mechanic and all that. And I think you guys did a really good job of spreading out those roles. So Lewis, I mean, you and Amanda both have a lot of nav in your background. You guys are able to take the maps and figure out your way. If Jason and Andrea fell off the rails, you could take it over, but you delegate those responsibilities out. I think that's a really good way to do it. I'm trying. I really like to be on Adventure Addicts since Michelle was the boss. I'm just the guy going after the CPs. Like, this is easy. I can carry stuff and be nav. And I ended up being backup nav for the first half of the race. It was a really weird experience. So Amanda, you how did you think it went? I mean, you know, I guess you did Paraguay with us, and you know, what role did you end up playing on this team? Was it different? And then how did you think it went?
Yeah, I mean, it was obviously different. I mean, in all the ways that Andrea already covered of like, I think that void, Andrea stepped up into it. And if I was picking an MVP, it would be Andrea. She was like a Wonder Woman. Really just like filling any void that needed to be filled. And just kind of like really moving into that leadership role. It was really awesome to watch her, like, and also like really motivating and I don't know, inspirational maybe. I don't want to be too overly dramatic about it, but yeah, it was really cool to watch her grow like that into that, into that role, particularly some of the stuff like bike mechanics things where she was like really questioning herself, but she did know how to fix some of the like kind of what I would consider like a gnarlier, like trickier problem that Jason was having on his bike. Yeah, I don't know. It was really cool to watch her step up for that. Initially I was the punch monkey, and then after the first day when I had an issue with the heat, she ended up carrying the trackers and being the punch monkey. Like, and then I would say that after that, the role for me kind of shifted into like get in wherever you can fit in. So in the TA, I mean, like, for example, everybody else has like foot care routines and stuff that they need to do, but I don't. So sometimes I'm able to like transition slightly a little faster because there's just like less steps. So I can be packing down pack rafts and dragging bags and carrying boxes over while people are still like going through the things that they need to get done, or they can be looking at the maps while just kind of taking care of some of the logistics in the TA. Which I think everybody who's been on a team for a while, like, I don't know, you just see that there's work that needs to be done. And if you're standing up and you're able to, then you try to do the work.
You lucked out by having no foot problems. I mean, it was carnage in this race with like the first, 48 hours, our feet were wet nonstop, crossing back and forth across the rivers in the rain. And so the fact that you didn't have feet issues, you're very, very lucky.
Yeah, it's one of those like freak of nature things where I think the whole, I mean, for people who don't know, I'm in the Army, and I think like the first maybe like 3 or 4 years in the Army, I would suffer so badly because people would tell you like, put this cream on, put this goo on, try this powder, try these socks, try these liner socks, try all these things. When in fact, at its core, the only thing that worked for me was like, just get a good, really thin, unpadded pair of wool socks and just put them on your feet and then put your shoes on and then just go. Yeah, and I know it like kind of freaks people out, but yeah, I mean, everybody's feet are different, but for me, yeah, it's pretty lucky, especially in a race like this where you're just wet. Even after the rain stopped, I mean, it was just swampy and pretty gross the whole time. I think people's feet were pretty wet pretty much the whole time.
I would say out of everything we dealt with on Adventure Addicts, foot problems and sleep problems, and the sleep problems were because of the foot problems. So that was one of the biggest things that was our biggest challenge, actually. Okay, so let's talk about overall strategy. Like, this is the first time you guys had raced together as a team. This was known to be a hard race, and it ended up, I think, being maybe harder than we thought in regards to navigation. Like, even the mandatory checkpoints were like expert level navigation. So what was your strategy going in? I guess Lewis, your team captain, but talk through it.
I just want to add one thing on kind of like the team dynamic that I think it's important for people, that are getting into the sport. So everyone's objective in these type of races is to get through the finish line. Okay? And I think it's an art to manage team dynamic, right? So for example, and I've seen this in different teams, right? People come with different expectations and different objectives for the race. Everybody has an individual objective, right? So I kind of started seeing what Andrea wanted out of the race, what Jason wanted out of the race, and what Amanda wanted out of the race. So for example, when I wanted to help more and I get like I can do it by myself, I'm like, okay, she can do it by herself. I'm not gonna ask anymore, right? Or hey, what if we go this way? And you're like, no, but okay, let's figure that out. So understanding team dynamics and understanding individual objectives for the race, I think that's important for for those younger teams and those people that are just putting those teams together, because that's what's going to get you through the finish line. So you can have the best nav, the best strategy, nothing happens, but if you're not getting along with each other and the dynamic doesn't work, there's a 90% chance you're not going to cross that finish line, right? So I think seeing those little insights throughout the race, and as you're going through it and just figuring out what is that motivation that's going to help each individual through the finish line, that's an art that like a captain should start learning as they start through the process of leading a team. Now, to answer your question specifically, strategy was I think our overall objective was, let's get through the finish line. Let's try and get first of all, let's get all the mandatory points, right? And for me, these new format of races where you have mandatory points and then pro points, it's kind of new because I'm kind of used to the point to point, get 12 checkpoints throughout 6 days and just make sure you get on the bus at the end, right? So I was actually asking Jason and Andrea, I'm like, all right, guys, so are we going to try and get all the mandatory points at the beginning? Or are we going to try and get all the mandatory points at the end? Like, what do you guys think? So I think we decided, and guys, feel free to pitch in, that, we're going to try and get everything at the beginning and then start giving up points towards the end if needed, right? So that was kind of the overall objective. But I don't know, guys, anything else that I might have missed?
Yeah, I think that we had already anticipated that we were going to give up most of the optionals on the big trek, right? I mean, we kind of already knew time-wise what was allocated and what how much time we thought we'd have when we got there and stuff like that. So we had planned, I think, picking up everything up until that point. Ideally, that would have been the way that things went. And then with some heat issues and stuff going on day one, I think we were moving a little bit slower than what we anticipated. And so we then kind of, I would say by Tuesday, so we took a nap at the hotel Tuesday morning, to rest and hopefully, get back to being healthy. And then I think from that point forward, we made the decision we're going to pretty much skip the optionals until we get back on track timing wise, and then reassess, if we can still pick up some more. So we kind of shifted pretty early in the race and what we felt we could do.
Yeah, and when we were at that hotel, we were interviewed by Brian Gatens, and I think we had already adjusted our expectations. And I think that's just so natural for us. Like, it almost happens every single race. I'm not sure there's been a race that I've done where our expectation changes at least a little bit. Maybe even for the better, like we're getting more than we thought we would, let's keep going for it, and vice versa. But I also wanted to clarify that Jason said we got a nap at the hotel. It wasn't actually inside the hotel, it was on the ground.
on the sidewalk,
in the courtyard of the outdoor space of the hotel.
Next to a trash can.
Yeah, it was a great sleep though. I remember thinking we just really needed it.
But it was super unique to have Brian there with the Dark Zone podcast, like interviewing every single team or teams, because sometimes they're together. So anybody that's listening to this, you should definitely check out the Dark Zone podcast, because you're hearing raw racer talk directly from the course. And that was a hard night. I mean, it had been raining, the trails were muddy, it was rooty, baby heads, the trails weren't like they were on the maps. And so a lot of teams were coming out of there, cannon fodder, just blown up. And some teams came out smiling, some teams came out not so good. So but good on you guys for getting a nap there. That was we definitely needed it too. All right, so when it comes down to strategy also, did you guys have a modality that you thought you were stronger? Like, were you giving up more points on the trekking or the biking, or how did you decide what points to give up? I mean, you mentioned the trek. Were you sandbagging because you thought you're going to be healthier on the bike, or vice versa?
No, so not necessarily. I don't think we would decide, oh, we're being stronger on the bike. I do remember that when, because, we had to deal with some heat exhaustion and that type of stuff. So it's managing those type of situations as well. But once we got into the optional trek, remember, guys, we did that one pretty quick.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Amanda recovered super quickly after that. We got her temperature down, and, she started, because she's a very good trekker. But we did that one relatively quick. I mean, we were probably one of the because when we came in, we were the last team to come in, but we weren't the last to get out. So we did that one pretty quickly. I don't think, if you asked me, we were pretty well balanced in terms of each of the disciplines. I can tell you the climbing, that was the climbing of the rocks, that was
The
not
rock climbing.
the rock climbing. That was not my forte, especially, and it made a lot of people laugh. But in general, I think we were pretty well balanced in all of the sections. I don't think we were, maybe probably on the trek we were probably a little bit stronger than on the bike.
Now tell me this. Rumor has it this was your first time rock climbing in the wild, and you've done like 30 expeditions.
Yeah, but
How the hell did you pull that off? Like,
well, with a lot of grit and but yeah, I mean, of all the races, I've never had to climb a rock like that. I mean, you know, there's been others where you have more things to grab into, and this was like technical rock climbing, US rock climbing. South American rock climbing is a little bit different. You have things to grab on and roots and that type of stuff. But this is like, I'm like, oh crap, like this is hardcore stuff. And then you have Andrea that climbed that thing like a cat, you know.
Well, I guess I was the most experienced rock climber, which isn't saying a whole lot because we haven't been climbing much lately. But just that whole forming a team having the same strengths is sometimes really fun because, you know, if we were on a different team, we'd be tearing up the mountain biking, and that's my favorite thing. I love that. But at the same time, if you have a team that has all one strength and you all suck at the other one. So it's kind of interesting to have a combination of strengths in different disciplines. And the rock climbing was no different. That was a lot of fun though. And it was really, I thought the structure of the race where you got a time penalty if you did not complete the point, but you weren't moved down to the other ranking, like you were still considered getting all the mandatory points, even if you didn't climb to the top. But it was a reminder to me too that the outdoor climbing is just a little bit harder, I think, than climbing in the gym. You know, the ratings seem a little bit harder. And never underestimate the value of rock climbing shoes. I think every one of you would have made it up with shoes. So but it was still fun. It was so fun to try. And I remember, Lewis, you saying that you needed a cigarette afterward. That's how how thrilling it was. So, and you're not a smoker in real life.
And I liked the bouldering section that was off of it as well. Like that whole section was just like a neat interlude for me. That was like a really good welcome relief, I think, to break things up, of just to do something different in the middle of the race. It was cool.
It just killed me that I didn't have a GoPro battery. So the highlight of the race, yeah, I thought it was the highlight for sure. And I didn't even have any footage of it. And there's little points where Amanda was just like crawling into this tiny hole. Like you needed a small person on the team just to get a couple of those. Fun.
And Amanda, you were talking about earlier, like it's nice to see the full course or as much of the course as possible. And you guys are probably just as stoked as we were that it didn't get shut down. A lot of times the rock climbing gets shut down, whether you got there too late or it's raining or it's dark. I was just like, awesome. Like we really wanted to do the rock climbing just because it was so different. And for those of you listening, the one thing that made this very unique is that each teammate had to do their own climb, and they were of different difficulty ratings, but the team had to decide who's going to climb what. One teammate couldn't climb for the other one, and if any teammate didn't complete the climb, we got the 45-minute penalty. So you had to make the decision: can you get up and down this thing in less than 45 minutes? Because if not, you should just walk away. And a lot of teams did that. A lot of teams, our team had somebody that didn't do the climb, and we just gave up the penalty. So I thought that was really unique, and I'm glad you guys were able to get through it. It sounded like fun.
Yeah,
we got 3 out of the 4. There was one we couldn't get.
Yep. They were hard. Like Lewis said, they were hard. This was not like if you didn't have rock climbing shoes, I especially 5'9", I just can't see getting to the top in your running shoes.
So I also feel like I have to have a caveat there because I did the 5'9", but did I really do the 5'9"? And by that, I mean, you know, I'm kind of experienced, and I gave the belay some instructions when I wanted him to be a little more snug than other times, you know, because there were some long stretches in that. So they were great belayers. I don't remember the rock climbing company, but maybe we can put that in the show notes because they would be excellent guides if anyone wants to go out to that part of the country and do some rock climbing with a guide.
Yeah, I do have to say that one of our probably secondary objectives, or so at least, we were talking about this, is like the true race was in the mid pack, right? I mean, you got the Bens and the BC Wilds and all those guys, but the true race was in the mid pack. I mean, with your team, with Adventure Addicts and some of the other folks. So, I mean, we I think we really wanted to be competitive within that mid pack, right?
Yep.
So I forgot to mention that at the beginning, right? So my objective was to beat Chip.
Yeah.
How'd that work out for you?
Yeah, we'll see next year. For me, at least personally, that made it so much more fun.
Yep.
Because first of all, you guys remember at the beginning, even throughout the race, we were always like seeing everyone and we're like, oh crap, we're still being competitive here. So that made us push ourselves harder. And I think towards the second or latter part of the race, you could probably see that we had some very good timings, maybe even faster than some of you guys, because we were really catching up, especially on that trek.
Yeah.
So that made it fun. I think probably that was our secondary objective. But I'll get you next time.
Yeah. It did seem like somebody just randomly took the cards and just built teams based on how the cards fell, because like each team had somebody that used to race together. Now they're racing against.
Yeah.
We were all kind of clustered. Like we're seeing each other at TAs, we're seeing each other at CPs, we're working on some CPs together, and then other times we're competitive. This was for me. This was the race where it was like like, remember, we went out to dinner the night before, or 2 nights before. The same teams at dinner were like, it seemed like I was seeing them every 30 minutes. This is so weird. We have all these other teams out here, and it's the same people we had dinner with that we keep leapfrogging. It's just so much fun.
It was very fun.
So I want to get into the overall highs and lows, but I'm going to switch up the question order a little bit. We talked about navigation a minute ago. Was there any specific nav things that either you had trouble with that you want to talk through, and how you wiggled your way out of it, or at any times where you spiked the football, you got it, you nailed it? A lot of this nav was super hard, big burly terrain, off trail travel with no real clear attack points. So what's your highs and lows on nav?
Yeah, I would say a lot of times we didn't have issues finding what I think were some of the more challenging checkpoints, but where the challenge was then like getting out of there. So for example, we didn't have any, I don't want to say any, we were pretty good on getting to 16. Like once we got down there, there's a group of people looking around, and we just said, hey, this doesn't look right. We looked at the map. I'm like, there's a trail that's supposed to be to the north. So I looked around, there's a trail. We went up the trail, took the path right down to where the waterfall was. So we didn't have a big challenge finding that one, but we did getting out of there, because there was that trail that wasn't really a trail that went up the re-entrant, and then we were like, well, this looks like a hike a bike for 2 clicks. So we ended up just taking the trail back around. It was kind of what we thought might have been the best of 2 bad options, but that took a while just to figure out, well, how the hell are we supposed to get out of here? So I remember that one. And then one of the other ones in hindsight that I think was good, because we know that a lot of other teams had trouble with, was going from was checkpoint 22 and then going from checkpoint 22 to 23. So 22 was that one that was in a re-entrant at the top of that ski trail. So you hiked all the way up that muddy path, and then we kind of stumbled across the checkpoint. So we saw the trail kept kind of going up the hill, and then there was the elephant footpath or whatever that was like kind of went off trail, and we were looking at that like, well, this doesn't seem right. We're walking up the trail. I just looked over to the left and I can see the checkpoint down in the re-entrant. So we just kind of like lucked out by catching it right away as we're walking by it. And then when we kept following that trail up, and maybe we stopped for like 5 minutes, looked at the maps, tried to figure out because things weren't lining up at that point. And Lewis went up a little bit ahead. There was another road that connected, so we followed that around. We realized we're at the top of the hill, and we took the road around to 23 as opposed to dealing with the off-trail travel. So looking back at the tracker and seeing kind of all the other teams that had trouble, working their way through there, I thought we did pretty good with that.
Nice.
I thought that was super exciting to see how well we did on that one. And another one that I know Jason is probably still beating himself up about, but when we went from 40 to 41, he was sure that we were going to bushwhack. The whole time he was kind of nervous about that one point because there wasn't an obvious trail or anything. So the straight route was bushwhacking up a very long ways and then spending quite a while on the plateau and then coming back down. And so, you know, since he and I are both somewhat less experienced at big navigation and big races, I think he second guessed himself. And so I kind of went with it as well because, you know, we saw some teams come up from the checkpoint at 40, like they came up and they went right on the trail. And it didn't make sense to us why they'd be doing that. And so it made us think like, well, all those teams are going that way. Like we should do that too. And we fell into a trap that I think, you know, it's just a rookie mistake. Like don't follow teams, but they were all our friends. They were all good teams. And they're like, why are they going right? And apparently they were just going right far enough to go up the spur instead of the reentrant, but we didn't see them in our view. And Rootstock had a bunch of supplemental maps that some of them seemed important and some of them didn't, and most of them didn't. But then we thought maybe this is the one that did matter. So the trail that we went on went off of our big maps, but it was on the supplemental map. And we're like, well, you know, it saves all the elevation change. And, you know, we stopped seeing evidence that any teams had gone by, but it wasn't like we were ever lost. It just took us a very long time. And we should have stuck to our guns. And, you know, that confidence is just kind of hard to come by when you're in a big race and you see other teams doing something that you think is different than what you're going to do. But I think, you know, Jason's instinct was just right. He just needed to follow it. And so also point number 42, it was coming out of a TA, and we saw team Trust the Compass, I believe, was there. And this is also my low. So I'm kind of segueing into this next question, but I had a little bit of a break and I'm sure everyone remembers it because, you know, I'd been kind of playing this game, you know, the first one to the top of the hill gets some extra weight on the bike. So I had quite a bit of stuff and I was finally getting a little bit of tired. So at one point I was like, oh, you're the king of the hill. You get the bike repair kit now. And so anyway, I was just playing around and I made it to the top of the hill. And it was just the first time that I had recognized Jason kind of just putting a little more effort into it. He was not lagging whatsoever, but I could just tell he's like putting a little bit more work in it. And I thought, oh no, if Jason starts to get too tired or, you know, if we wear him out, he's like our best chance to get out of this mess because I was not as confident right there. And we'd come across Trust the Compass and they said they'd already been there for 5 hours. Wow. And we went up and we went down, left and right. We went all these different ways. And finally, Jason thought, this is it. We've got it figured out. And the map too, it was just messing with my mind. Like the highs looked like lows and the topo lines, like it was just all becoming a mess in my brain. And that's when I was like, I think I just about started crying, or even maybe I did. I stopped myself from bawling. Let's just say that. And I was like, oh, we got to take care of Jason because he's going to get us out of here. And then we took the road down, which was the wrong way, but it did lead us to where we knew exactly where we were on the map. So then we went a very long way around to get to 42. And but that was my low. And that was looking back at the maps. We definitely weren't the only team that had a problem there. In fact, talking to Trust the Compass afterward, I think they said they took 9.5 hours to get from the TA to that next point. So we did it quite a lot better than that, but it was my low, and we got ourselves out of it, which is always really exciting too. So those lows followed by a really high is also another addicting thing about adventure racing.
you're describing the emotion of like the not being able to think and wanting to cry and all of that. Were you guys sleep deprived? Because to me, it sounds like this is like everybody just
Well,
needs to
duh.
take 20 minutes and lay down and, put the maps down and then think about it when you're clear.
Yeah, we did that. We did that a decent amount. 20 minutes here, 20 minutes there. I mean, I felt like we slept for. So when we left TA 6, right? Is that the last TA, right? The after the paddle, we left there. We went to KFC. We ate. Then on our way to the trailhead, we found a playground. We slept for an hour before we headed out on that last leg. Really, but yeah, that was definitely. I will agree that was probably the biggest low from a navigation standpoint because really up to that point we felt like everything was going good, and I'm still looking back at it and trying to figure out what the hell happened, because one of the things I felt we did good the entire time was like, look, if the trail's going northeast, we're constantly making sure we're going northeast. If the trail's turns, good, we captured the turn on the compass, right? Like we're following, making sure directionally we're going. The only way we could have gotten to where we were is if we stayed on the trail when it turned southwest, and I'm like, I just do not remember ever turning that direction, but that's where we were. Looking at the tracker, I can see where we were and why we got to where we were, why we came out of there where we did. But the way we came out was, hey, this is the only trail going east. We got to take this trail. that was pretty much the decision we ended up making. And I think at that point, I don't know, Andrew, if you remember, I was like, you're like, well, let's look and let's just. And I'm like, no. I just need time to think. I just need time to think. I can't like too much information because we had trust the compass and us, and I was just like too much information. I'm like, I just need to take a minute and figure out like what our best option is at this point.
Yeah,
And we did what we had to do.
I appreciate that you said that because I know what you're talking about when sometimes you just need to block everything out to be able to think clearly. So I appreciated that you said that. And there were a few other times in the race where I thought like I just overstepped, like I just, and not necessarily, I mean, that time you told me, I just like, okay, I'm going to back up. And I talked to the other teams a little bit, just to see if there's any guidance from them that might help us. Anyway, they were in as much of a pickle as I was. But another couple of times, like we all handle low moments differently. And I know Amanda wanted to have some time to herself a few times, but yet I was right there in her face. So, I just felt like when you're not used to being in a leadership role, I guess, of that type, I was second guessing myself sometimes. And a few times I did think that I overstepped. But I also appreciated that both of you guys just said, no, this is what I need now. I don't need what you're giving me right now. I need something different. So that communication, I think, is really good for a team.
And the other thing is good on you guys for stopping when that confusion happens. That shows that you guys are experienced, because a lot of the newbie navigators, I think they're like, I don't really know where I am, but I don't feel comfortable telling everybody. And then they continue on, even though they're not really sure where they are, or they follow the next team. And then you're off the map and you're really screwed. So good on you for as a team, having the trust that you could take that break and say, I need to stop. We're going off. This doesn't make sense. I need time to think. That's a very mature navigator decision to do that. So let's get into sleep. I think we got about 10 minutes left. So let's talk about sleep strategy. Let's go with Amanda. We haven't heard from you recently. How did your sleep strategy go?
I don't know if we talked heavily about what we wanted our sleep strategy to look like, but I mean, going into it, we knew that Rootstock put together very technically challenging navigational courses. So at least my expectation going in, and maybe this was like, I think it was like kind of an unspoken expectation of everyone that like, because it's so challenging, sleep is going to be a lot more important. So normally you can maybe like raise, or at least for us in the mid pack, you can like razor wire it of like 1 to 2 hours and you can get by. But I think we slept about 3 hours most nights after the first day, maybe. Does that sound right to you guys? And then a couple like safety sleeps in between, or maybe a give and take. That last, like you mentioned, Jason, after coming out of that last TA, just 1 hour. But yeah, I think this was probably one of the more sleep heavy races I've ever done. And we slept primarily outside of TAs. I don't know that that was something that we chose beforehand, but we wanted to make sure that everybody had really quality sleep. So we were always looking for places that were far away from all the noise and excitement that's in a TA all the time. So whether it was like scouting out pavilions that were far away from the main transition area or playgrounds. I think we slept in a couple playgrounds actually. Yeah, we primarily tried to sleep outside of there to let everybody get some really good sleep. In terms of gear that we were using, I think we were all in those sole bivy bags, except with the exception in transition area. I think Andrea maybe slept one night in her like real sleeping bag. But I mean, like you mentioned, Chip, earlier, the bigger part of sleeping was getting everybody's feet elevated and getting people's feet dried out. So I think that was primarily the biggest benefit for a lot of people. And those sole bivy bags, I mean, they get pretty swampy and gross smelling, but they do actually kind of cook you and everything inside of it. So, you know, it's a good way to like dry out any layers you have right against your body, and to dry your feet out too as well while you're in there. I think it's a mixture, everybody's preference of like individual preference of do you sleep on a mat, or do you sleep right on the ground? Outside of transition areas, like in the woods, we all just slept on the ground. I don't think anybody had any pads out there. But when we were near like pavilions or other things, I think it's like half and half of us would try to sleep in like an elevated kind of position, you know, away from all like the creepy crawlies and the kind of wet ground. Like if you can have nice sleep on a bench, on a picnic table or a playground platform, then you should have good sleep on those things. But again, it's kind of personal preference.
Did everybody use eye masks and earplugs and other stuff like that to block out noise and light? No?
I
No.
did.
think maybe
We had a bear that was chasing us in every sleep area. There was always a bear there making noises that even with earplugs, you know.
guess who the bear was?
I was snoring.
Okay. They're like, Jason, that's your pavilion, and then we're gonna sleep over here. Yeah.
Oh, that was only one night. Then he didn't. Well, 2 nights. Then
It was 2 nights.
Yeah.
But I remember thinking like every time you'd come to wake me up and be like, you're snoring. I'm like, I would just go back to sleep because I'm like, I'm sleeping. What am I supposed to do about it?
So one thing is the either Flonase, you can take that before you go to sleep and it widens your nostrils, or take Afrin or something like that. But the clearer your sinuses are, the less chance of snoring.
I lost the bathroom.
So I normally carry something with me. So it's eye mask, earplugs, and something to make your sinuses empty of boogers. All right.
So one more thing about the sleeping though, I took my mat out on the Trek E. I love having a mat with me, even though it's a little extra stuff. And instead of the Soul Escape Bivy, I used that for the first night, I think. And after that, I took my sleeping bag that is the knockoff Spark sleeping bag, which was $150. And I don't know what it's rated for the lower temperature, but it was perfect for this race. And I wasn't sweating inside of the bivy sack, because that drives me crazy. The bivy sack, you'll get moist and then you get cold, even though you're supposed to be warm. Anyway, I think from now on, I'm just not going to use that Escape Bivy anymore. I'm just going to take that small sleeping bag. And I guess depending on the temperatures, but yeah.
Available on Amazon. About 1.1 pounds. We can put the link in the race notes or thank you, Amazon, for saving me $200. You know. Okay, so I'm gonna have to skip some of this stuff, but the one thing everybody loves to talk about is food in these races. So let's do a quick round robin. What did you do with food? What did you like? What would you do different in the future? Let's start with Lewis.
So I came to this race directly from a work trip. So I had to pack like 3 weeks ago. So I really packed everything, you know, super, super fast and everything. So I did not have a lot of variety in my food. It was like basically the same type of bags, which worked. I mean, it worked. So, you know, when Andrea took something really delicious that she made, it like those monster cookies. I need the recipe, by the way. Thank you very much. I was like, so for me, food was pretty basic. I use Morton, which is like like a mix, and I had my chiefles and very, very basic food. Some gels. So I was aiming for about, around 100 calories per hour, whether they were liquid or solids, and that's how I made my bags. I did have one incident with my adventure meals. So, I took my adventure meals and I had my spork, and I have a little dry bag where I have my spork, and stupid me, I put the same stuff, like my foot care stuff, in the same dry bag, and the foot powder that is antifungal exploded, and it was really dark and really late, so we're eating, and I take my spork out, and I didn't notice that it was full of the antifungal powder, and I put it in the food. And so I can tell you, I don't have fungus in my mouth. So that was my experience with food and the sport. So don't put your spork where you put the foot powder.
Yeah.
I
And eat
think-
before you lube.
Yeah.
We all ate off of that spork even after that fungal powder incident.
Yeah.
That was pretty boring.
So Jason, how about you on food?
Just a lot of variety. So Spring Energy, I like their stuff a lot. So I had a lot of their purees with me, and then Mountain House and candy, cookies, jerky. I like a lot of different things, because when you're in the middle of the race and stuff starts not sounding good or tasting good, you kind of have some options. So.
Yep. Amanda?
I'm also on the Morton and Chiefles bandwagon. Yeah, that was good. I think favorite food. I love those Honey Stinger little energy chew gummies. Those are great, and they're so easy to eat. And then least favorite food, I would say probably those yogurt covered raisins that Andrea
Oh my God.
passed off on the whole race.
That was your least favorite?
Oh, I didn't even eat it. The idea of her even trying to pass me a yogurt covered raisin was just, I don't know if it was the heat or what, but it was like vomit inducing just thinking about
Wow.
it.
Gonna give them away.
I could
Yeah,
crush
I
those
tried to-
things.
I tried to give those away so many times. I couldn't. I think I might have eaten one of them and decided I could not do it. I would have to be starving to eat that. Not doing that ever
Feel free to
again.
leave those in my TA box next time if we don't race together. Little gifts. So Andrea, how about you on food?
Well, I made my monster cookie bars again. I really like those.
Great.
Those are always easy to eat. We made our own jerky and dried apples and bananas, and those were favorites of mine. The Mountain House meals were always good. Yeah, I think that's it. But I hope we have time for our highs, because we talked about our lows, but we need to talk about some highs.
Okay.
So piggybacking, I'll tell you what somebody's high was at a KFC. So we ended the second pack rafting section, and it was a long section. It was hot, so we were starving. So we go into town, and we're like asking, is there like a McDonald's? So we ended up at a KFC, and Jason and Andrea, it was like they were high on weed with THC at 1,000 levels. And we just sat down at the KFC, and we were waiting for the food, and there's even a recording of this, so I really want to see that on the GoPro.
Oh, it's funny. I watched it. It's funny.
And they were just babbling and talking nonsense, and it was, oh my gosh, it was so funny. Like I was just cracking up. We were all just cracking up at a KFC, and people were looking at us like we were crazy. That was so funny. So yeah, that was probably one of my highs.
So what other highs did you have that you want to go over?
the amount of laughing at we had I don't know how many messages you had from Tomas, Chip. We had to have at least like 30. And we were just laughing because it was just one after another when we were reading the trail mail when we got to TA5. That was pretty funny.
And his jokes were just like, really, like, what dad jokes is he coming up with? This is crazy. Yeah.
And then, although we finished late at the end of we missed the cutoff by like 30 minutes. For me, like, and this is kind of going back to what we mentioned before, I think our objectives just kept changing throughout the race. And, time was really cutting down, and it's just like, well, now our new objective is just getting these last 2 checkpoints. And then, by the cutoff, then when we've missed the cutoff, it's like, well, we're still just going to get this last checkpoint. And just like, I don't know, for me at the end there, that was pretty exhilarating to just like, hey, we're still going to get all the mandatories regardless of what time we finish. And I don't know, I felt like that was a high for me.
That was an excellent decision, by the way. Like, the entire race, we're watching the dots. Like, what are they going to do? Are they going to go for this or go for that or give that up? And you made exactly the right decision. So good on you for figuring that out and not rushing to the finish and skipping that last Mando.
Yeah, it was funny too at the end, right? Because we were crossing the bridge, and Garrison's like, "Hey, come see me at the after the bridge." And I'm like, "We're going to 45 first." He's like, "Yeah, just go do that."
Yep, they sent him out there specifically, like, don't skip the Mando. Yeah, that was good.
That's pretty cool that they were going to do that. Like, we had already decided to go for that last CP, but it was pretty cool that they were concerned that we didn't know the ramifications, because I don't think it was printed in the rule book. And they're so thorough. I'm kind of surprised it didn't. Their race materials were so good, but we didn't take the time to read it anyway. I think, like Jason said, we'd adjusted our goals, and I thought that was a high too. Just coming down that, we came down a paved road instead of the optional checkpoints way. And that paved road was just so fast and fun. And, we kind of realized, well, the race is over, but look what we've done. Like, we've accomplished so much and we're just still going for it. That was a high for me too. And also, do you guys remember the rainbow? Thought that was pretty cool. That was another high for me. Pretty neat sight.
It was exciting for me that normally I'm the one screeching into the finish line with seconds on the clock, thinking I'm going to be late. And Andrea's always the one that wants to be early. And the fact that I was like an hour and a half early and she's late, like, that was a high for me.
What was your high, Amanda?
For me, I really like the monster truck. Like, I just like to be in the forest, and I like really big, burly, long legs. I know you guys were really enjoying being in the packs with the other teams, but I like when everything is spread out and we get like way out and it feels like you're the last people on Earth for hours and hours and hours. So again, kind of you were talking about, there's different preferences and skill sets on the team of like, what do people like, and especially with how wet people's feet were, it was probably smart not to spend any more time on our feet than we did. But I wish we could have stayed there longer, because that was, for me, the whole time was just such an enjoyable leg. And the weather finally broke for the most part. Like, I don't know, I was finally feeling like mostly recovered, and it was just an amalgamation of things. It was just a really good time.
And you survived stepping on a cobble with a copperhead.
Copperhead, yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, that was pretty spooky.
Amanda stepped on a copperhead.
Not good. You guys saw a lot of snakes. I was surprised to see that in the video. Like, we didn't see any on our team, but you guys, like, especially that one little area where there's like 4 or 5 all snuggling together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was along the rails to trail, and there were 4 or 5 snakes just all nestled in the rocks. That was ugh.
Those are rattlesnakes?
Mm-hmm.
Jeez. Meanwhile, we're walking through ferns, like Amanda said, these big burly mountains. We're just walking along like, we know they're out here. Let's try not to step on them.
Yeah.
Okay, so coming up on time. Last thing, what's in store for you guys? What's your next big race? What are you looking forward to? I guess we'll go start with Lewis again. We'll work around.
Well, big race, obviously, Worlds. So for me, this race, this is kind of like a shakeup for Worlds. I felt really good. I mean, I'm already kind of recovered. I wasn't very tired. My feet did fantastic. So I had a whole different foot strategy, and I just got one blister, which is great. But yeah, so for me, the next big race, I was thinking of going to Ecuador to Guaracincha in a couple of weeks, but with schedules and work, it's getting complicated, so I can't go this time. So this will be the first time I miss one. So I'm sad about that. But Worlds, I'm trying to see if I put something in the middle between, maybe not such a long expedition race, but just something to keep me motivated until Worlds. So, might do a 24 or 36 hours somewhere. I haven't looked yet, but definitely, getting there, really good training for Worlds.
You and Jason compare it for the longest day.
Oh, in New York, yeah.
Yeah.
Unless he already is racing with someone.
Well, I've got Maine Summer Adventure Race in a couple weeks, and a couple weeks after that, I am doing Longest Day, and then a month after that, we've got Nationals. So
yeah, he has a packed agenda. He's very popular.
What's that?
You're very popular. You have a packed agenda.
I have one teammate who lives nearby, so we're lucky we have all these races in the Northeast. To be honest, kudos to all the race directors up here doing a good job.
Are you doing those with Al?
I am.
Yeah, it was great to see him on the race. The 30-hour racers started at the same time and had the first leg or two pretty similar as us. So we saw Al around the checkpoint 16, and he went north and we went on the trail. So it was fun to hear back from him that he had a horrible experience.
Jason's like, yes. Yeah. Normally teammates, but this time we're competitive.
Well, no, we weren't competing then either, because he was in the 30-hour race going solo.
Yeah.
Still, like the 30-hour in our race was the same race, basically, right?
Almost. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like as long as you're in front of them before the 30th hour, you still could be.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Amanda, how about you? You got any big races on the calendar? I know you're moving and job changing and all of that. Do you have time to throw another race in anytime soon?
No, next up for me is also Worlds in October. So I'll be racing with the German team, VAC Ultra Sports. So Vincent Meyer, Angelis Myers, and Dennis from Croatia. So we'll see you guys there.
Yep. So cool that you guys are able to do Worlds. That's awesome. Andrea, what about you?
Well, Colorado's coming up really soon, my home state. I'm super excited about that. Chip and I are racing, just the two of us, which we haven't done in a very long time. So that'll be kind of fun. After that is the Buff Betty. I'm excited I get to do that this year. They're having a 10 to 12 hour option this year. So that'll be fun. And then Worlds. So yeah, I'm so grateful that I have the opportunity to do these things, because they're really amazing. Everyone should try it.
All right. Well, thank you guys. I think that covered everything. We're a little bit over time, but I appreciate you taking the time to share your experience. And we look forward to the videos coming out. They're in production right now, and we've already looked through them and gotten them done. So hopefully in the next couple of days, your entire 5-part video series will be coming out showing your experience. And so everybody keep an eye out for that. So,
and one last thing, we need to thank Brent and Abby for putting on a great race, and all of the volunteers, all of the media, Randy Erickson and Vlad Bucalo and Nick Wynia. Those three took photos and videos, and Paul Miller was out there. I think there's still some stuff I haven't seen yet. So it was just such a great experience, and I know they spent a lot of time volunteering to do that. So thanks. It was wonderful.
Yeah. And another shout out to Brian Gatens. I think he had 4 or 5 podcasts from this race alone. He had a thing with Ben, and he did Zoe, interviewed Zoe before the race, and then he had the one at the hotel. This is really neat. There was a lot of coverage at this. So anybody that wanted to dot watch and really get involved in this race, the media team was amazing.
And he interviewed the volunteers too. So if you're ever thinking about getting into adventure racing, volunteering is a great way to do that.
No, and thank you guys for letting us race as Team Disability this time without Chip.
Anytime.
To the team, it's hard to get for people that have never raced together before to do so well. So I'm always looking forward to racing with you guys again. But thanks for the support. Thanks for being out there, for pushing through, and just taking care of each other. So thank you guys.
Thank
I
you.
look forward to the days when we have 2 team disabilities in the same race. So thank you for stepping up, Lewis, and being another team captain. I think we have enough racers that have raced with us. We can definitely go into some of these races with 2 teams.
Looking forward to it.
Yep. All right, guys. Well, have a great evening, and thank you so much for your time and sharing your experience.
All right, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Okay.
Bye.
We hope you enjoyed this podcast. Please take a moment to leave a rating and a comment.
If you have a question for the next mailbag segment, call 757-354-4795 and leave us a voicemail or a text with your name, city you are calling from, and your question.
To find additional content, including the video versions of these discussions, you can search for thisABILITY Racing on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram.
We hope this podcast inspired you to focus on your abilities and plan your next adventure.
See you on the trail.